The future of work and leadership always starts with us. Welcome to the Dr. Ginny Show. Let's dive in. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Dr. Ginny Show. I am giving you a special episode today from my living room across from my fireplace, next to my little puppy, Bruce. I wanted to share with you as we wrap up this year the number one takeaway from my recent conversation with the Tone Networks. I gave them the top 10 strategies only an executive coach will share. And one of the strategies that I want to pass on to you is what I believe is impacting all of us, especially those of us in senior leadership roles. The strategy is to remove the noise or the mental clutter. That is something that impacts us no matter what level of the organization we are at, especially when we are at senior leadership levels, executive team level. The reason why the mental clutter is so heavy on us is that it distracts from what's most important. It creates an illusion. The fire du jour happens to be the most important item, when in fact, the discernment that we need to develop as senior leaders between what's real and what's noise will become more and more impactful for us as we continue to lead at this level, supporting the organization through all the changes that we're facing, the constraints that we are every single day dealing with, and to allow us to preserve the bandwidth for our teams and for ourselves so we can continue to show up in the best way that we can. The mental clutter is what creates that fog, that indecision, that hesitancy that we carry with us. And so the first step that I want you to take as you listen to this podcast today is to ask yourself, how heavy do I feel? Because part of the heaviness is coming from your mental clutter. So the assessment is step one, self-awareness, part of our emotional intelligence. This is what we work on when I work with senior leadership teams, is to really look at where are we now? What's happening? What is the real moment telling us? That real moment is going to inform what happens next. If you find yourself identifying a lot of heaviness and a lot of mental clutter, write it all down. Create a list of all the things that are currently blocking you, that if you could remove and set to the side, you would show up in such a different way. Let's bring that awareness to what that list is for you specifically. And then once you have the list, let's look to discern what's real and what's noise. What's real are the things that you know are big problems that you need to solve along with your team. What's not are somebody else's problems that landed on your lap that don't belong there. And that, what we want to do with that part of the list is we want to give it back and say, by the way, here's a list of things that are currently on my plate that I believe are best served under your purview because of your expertise and your area of responsibility. And I'm going to focus on these other ones that are 100% aligned with my responsibilities. This is going to create bandwidth for you and for your team. It's going to give them ownership of what's theirs. And then you're also going to notice where you may be resisting giving up this ownership because of some other reason. And then my question to you is, what is that reason why you're holding on to it? What's making you want to own that? That's going to give you so much more space. And we can apply the 80-20 rule, which is when you look at the list of the things that are real, what are the 20% that will give you 80% of the impact? The 80% that only gives you 20% of the impact is what I would like for you to start calling noise. That's noise. It's stuff that has to happen somehow, and you can delegate it, you can automate it, and you can potentially delete it. And that is a decision that you get to make as a senior leader, because you realize that even though it's on the list, is not going to deliver for you and the team and the organization. So we want to get rid of it. And the 20% that will give you 80% of the impact, that's where you want your resources to go to. That's where you're going to reallocate your team to work on that 20%. This level of discernment is going to require that we do something that many of us are still struggling with, and that is to let go of the concern about what others will say or how they will perceive us, especially at the senior level. It's very important, I know, for many of us to be team players, because we are. And simultaneously, how do you walk the line of being a team player while at the same time being uber focused on that 20% that delivers the most impact? The way that I would recommend to you as a senior leader to address this conversation with someone that you may be concerned may perceive you differently when you start saying, this doesn't belong to me, I'm going to pass it on to a rightful owner, is to question, what is my intention? So what is my intention in this person's perception of me? And that may be that you want to be reliable. You want to be someone they can lean in with. You want to let them know that you are there for the organization. And when you claim this ownership of only that 20% that will make the biggest difference, and you're able to communicate to your counterparty, what is your rationale? Believe me, if this person that you're concerned about is the type of person that you truly respect, and you're able to communicate the rationale behind your strategy, this person will get behind you too. Because your rationale for focusing on that 20% of the project initiatives that will give you that 80% impact is a solid and strong rationale. And if the person is at that level of strategic perspective, they're also going to see your point of view. And if they don't, the key question to ask them is, what's your biggest concern? Or what is your perspective on this? And hear them out, because they may have information that you may not have. So notice how there is a certain level of people pleasing going on, even at the highest levels. And also, we don't want to disappoint, which is part of the people pleasing. I'm calling it out on purpose as people pleasing because many of us, including myself, can relate to that term. When you break it down, though, and you notice how you may start to censor yourself or not make aligned decisions, basically because you don't want to disappoint, that is a people pleasing tendency that we may have a blind spot around. And talking about this and bringing it up to your attention is actually in the way in which I serve you as your coach and advisor at this level. So notice where you feel that resistance. And when you feel that resistance, let's start talking to that resistance. What is the resistance about? What is my biggest concern? What is my biggest fear if I proceed in this way? And once you have the answer to that, then we can have an honest conversation about, okay, if I notice that this is mostly about perception, what can I do to address that proactively? And that will take us back to having an empowering conversation with the person that you're most concerned about and outlining specifically for them the reason and the logic that you walk through to come up with your decision and how this is going to benefit the organization. What is the return on investment? What is the utilization of resources? Where are the savings? Where is the strategic outlook that will support the product, the services, and the clients and stakeholders involved? That's clear thinking. That's aligned thinking. And notice what we're doing is we're separating the truth from the fiction. The truth is the problem, the fact, the client, the product, the service. The fiction is the fear, the wanting to people please, the wanting not to be seen in a different light than how you want to. And by the way, what are the chances that people see you in the light that you want? That's happening in our heads. It's not happening in real life. No matter how much we try to exude a certain perception, people are going to make up their minds based on their own lenses. So this is what happens when you take the time to strategically think through your portfolio of projects, what your team is focusing on, and how you strategically think about delegating the 80% that delivers 20% of the impact, automating it, or eliminating it thoughtfully through rationale with ROIs to speak to. And then you can do the same exercise with your team. Have them go through their projects, their initiatives, and go through the same rationale and logic that I just described. What is the 20% of the things on your list that will deliver 80% of the results? And let's talk about the 80% that will only deliver 20%. I understand that we have business as usual. We have to take care of certain things. We have regulatory concerns and compliance, etc. And then we have real problems to solve that must be addressed. And then we have a lot of other things that are noise and clutter. This is how we remove the mental clutter, first by ourselves, and then help our teams do the same. One of the techniques that I use daily that support me in keeping my mental clutter as clean as I possibly can is to journal. And some of you already do this. It's a practice that leaders at the highest level are doing daily. When we journal, it's a stream of consciousness where we release anything that's clouding our judgment, clouding our thoughts, heavy on us energetically. And we're able to articulate it and put it in writing. And when we do this, we get rid of the clutter and the noise. That's one of the ways that I do it. Another way that I do it, in case this serves you, is I meditate in the morning and at night. Not always. There's days when I'm on the go, that I have a lot of things going on, and I'm not able to do it twice a day. Whenever I'm in my habitat, in my normal schedule, I make it a point to meditate in the morning and meditate at night for 20 minutes. If you haven't explored with meditation, I would say this: the biggest value I see to meditation is that it allows you to increase your executive presence because it increases your presence. When you are in meetings with your team, in meetings with other senior leaders, meeting with the board, that executive presence to be able to shut out all the other things happening in your mind and be present fully there in the moment is going to pay you dividends. And meditation is a practice of mindfulness that teaches you how to come back to the moment. When you're meditating and your thoughts begin to drift, you bring yourself back to this moment. That's the practice of mindfulness. And when you get up from your meditation seat and you are at a meeting or at a board meeting, you can harness the same mindfulness so that when you notice your thoughts are drifting away from that room and the conversation at hand, you can bring yourself back simply because you noticed that you drifted. That's it. That's the power of meditation. So if you are looking to become an even more influential leader, more impactful, to be able to truly listen between the lines when you're having negotiations, when you're having strategic conversations with your team, with vendors, with stakeholders, the practice of meditation is going to exponentially grow your executive presence. And with executive presence comes your influence. And with that also comes how people perceive you, which is, unbeknownst to you, your personal brand, how people feel about you and what people say about you when you leave the room. As we conclude this episode of the Dr. Ginny Show, what's resonating for you as we talk about clearing the mental clutter? What has been most impactful? What is your biggest takeaway from what I've shared in the last 15 minutes or so? Whatever that is, make a note of this and begin to put in practice one single step from what I shared today. Notice how you feel after practicing this for a week and then potentially 2 weeks. And eventually, I would invite you to practice it for 30 days to see what you notice. And this is another tool I'll give you. Notice what you notice. What's changed? How are you showing up? How more peaceful do you feel? How are you feeling? Are you feeling anxious or are you feeling grounded and calm? Now, this is despite what's going on. We know that life will continue to happen in our professional lives and personally. This is how we are going to move through the world. It is not circumstantial. It is a new way of being. This is a new way of becoming. And so I invite you to practice it, experiment with it, and based on what you learn, tweak and keep going. It's always such a pleasure to connect with you. Thank you for joining me here in my living room as we close out the old year and welcome the new year. And I just want to say, if this served you, share it with your friends, share it with your colleagues. And if you would like to join me for a 15-minute cyber coffee, I would love that. I will leave the link with this post, and wishing you and your loved ones and your teams aligned decisions, clarity, and lots of courage in this new year. I'll see you soon. If you enjoyed today's content, I appreciate your review so others can find us, and share it with your friends. And to stay in touch, join our community to receive valuable strategies and expert advice at drginnybarrow.com. See you soon.